I really feel like I need this, I need to start this video with a shout out to Motanum, aka X-Motanum, aka the Dino Pack guy, who's made the Dino Pack in Parkitect, which is one of the first things I'll play around with in this episode. It's got some amazing stuff, and I've fanboyed over it way too much, but it's got some ferns, ground shrubbery, some small fences, which I also kind of like, and palm trees, which are all of the things that we needed in Parkitect but were missing so far, but we now have, which is really cool. I also really need to express my utmost gratitude about the system of how you make observation towers and launch towers in this game, because they are so amazing. Literally you build the ride and then it just looks like a short stump that is just completely ugly, but you can actually just grab the top and just hover your mouse up and down and the length of the tower will follow, with some amazing sounds playing during doing that, which is actually really cool. And I sort of like it. And actually, there was a video where the Codemaster was playing this game and he was like stuck for a couple of minutes just dragging a launch tower up and down. I mean, it's a drop tower, whatever, same thing. Which was actually exactly how I feel about that function as well. Off camera, I've actually spent a lot of time doing that stuff. It's I don't know why, but it's actually sort of fun to do. And that's pretty much that. There's magically foliage has appeared around the pirate ship ride, and this episode will be mostly not about this little food court, which is more of a snack bar inspired little thing, but it's mostly about something which I wanted to try somewhere in the corner of this park, which is honestly does sort of reveal the entire idea of this park, which is mostly to figure out stuff in Parkitect and see what you can really do in it. But I want to create a large, well, pretty big hill, really. It's so large that it should probably be a natural hill, which means that this park is not in the Netherlands, but I'm not sure about that. Where I want to have a log flume, of course, and I wanted to get a mine train, and I literally felt so stupid about that. I was playing the game and I was like, alright, I'm gonna add a mine train around there, and that was like my thought for 20 minutes playing this game, and for the longest time I was looking for the mine train. I thought I couldn't remember where it was, but then I remembered that this game doesn't have a mine train, so it's gonna be a hill with a log flume and a suspended coaster, which is very Six Flags-ish, which it 100% is. It's gonna be a big rip-off of Ninja, and that's pretty much what's gonna happen in here, but not yet, because I still needed to do some foliage over here and actually finish the path that leads up to the pirate ship, which is right behind the pirate ship is where I do want to have that big mountain, where the log flume should have about 2 drops, and where hopefully a suspended coaster will be happily swinging over the log flume and over the lake and around and, well, pretty much through the mountain. At least that was the idea. It turned out to become a lot harder than I was hoping, but in the end I do think it works out alright, so you'll see that shortly, I think. And in the meantime, this little area over here with the pirate ship ride still sort of needs to be finished. Well, I was a bit unsure about the queue line, especially since I wanted to have one of these little, sandy paths that you very often have that go to these, well, swinging ships, but any tropical ride, really, kind of diving through the foliage and rockwork here and there. But really the choice of paths at the moment is way too limited to even try something like that. So that's basically the idea behind the weird sudden yellow path leading from the swinging ship, which I'll be doing more. It sort of represents a sandy path. It probably doesn't look like it, and it probably looks like shit, but that's the idea behind it. And the idea behind this little observation thing is I just want a place from which you could look at the pirate ship, and other than that, it's completely ripped off from the pirate ship and uses the same color scheme and the same wooden things, because I couldn't really come up with anything else, and I figured I could just get it in the same style and that would be all nice and dandy. So that's why that's there. And that's pretty much it for this area, I think. Not that there's really anything else. At this point, when I was still doing this, I sort of wanted to continue beyond the carousel over there and see what I wanted to do with that, but really I was way too unsure, so just kind of did some side stuff like added little ferns inside the planters and things like that, which is pretty much what I did for the next 20 minutes, because that's essentially what I felt like Parkitect was missing, still is without the mods, is and this is gonna sound like a big Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 circle jerk, but it's ground shrubbery. For anyone who doesn't know about that entire Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 circle jerk, is that, I don't know for how many years, but pretty much for as long as I can remember, has been a sort of running gag around ground shrubbery, whereas people would complain about other people's rides and give harsh criticism, saying that it didn't have enough ground shrubbery, and it only has enough ground shrubbery when you can't see the ground. That's pretty much it. There is no such thing as too much ground shrubbery, and that is why there are so many shrub custom scenery sets in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, and why you find so many coasters in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 that were made by people that have way too much stuff going on the ground, which sort of turned into one big joke. But I opened up Parkitect and it doesn't even have any bushes whatsoever, so having those little ferns and those little plants from the Dino Pack, as small of a change as it does seem, it does really help to have some ground shrubbery, which is almost necessary, really. I don't think even Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 had it, really, but it's something that makes your ground look a lot better if you're in 3D view rather than isometric, since the ground is quite boring and grass is boring, and having some interesting ferns and lots of flowers to look at the ground, however unrealistic it may be, always sort of just looks a little bit more attractive than having completely empty grass. Which is sort of why I want to spam ground shrubbery from the Dino Pack in this park as well. So that's the entire story behind that, I suppose. This little opening over here, where it opens up quite a large lake, was pretty much necessary to get the log flume going. And the log flume will sort of, well, actually you'll see that in a bit, but I was planning to just build the mountain first, see whatever it would look like eventually, and then only after the mountain is finished get the log flume in, and after that the coasters. So it was really, if this mountain failed, the log flume would have failed and the invert would have been even worse. And if this log flume fails, then it's going to be hard to actually get an invert in around that, especially with their hitboxes. So it was kind of important to at least have some sort of planning of what I wanted to do. So the big lake is where this little log flume should splash down eventually, and it sort of just kind of makes its way around the top of the mountain but doesn't entirely make it, and I just felt like I really had to make that little tunnel in order to leave at least some space for the suspended coaster, which in the end probably wasn't enough space because I still had major issues trying to fit the suspended coaster in next to this log flume. But it's not too bad in the end. I hope it's not too bad, really. It'll all be fine eventually. As much of a mess as this mountain currently looks like, it's gonna be fine eventually, hopefully. That was pretty much why I wanted to sit through this entire thing anyway. And this little flat area is where I wanted to have a restaurant, which at first I sort of wanted to make into a very special restaurant, but in the end it turned into something else, which you'll see eventually in the next episodes. But yeah, this is the basic layout of the log flume. It's very short, since I was very much afraid that if I made the log flume a lot larger and run around the mountain a lot more, I would have issues with the suspended coaster, which again I ran into anyway, but I suppose they aren't quite as large at the moment as they could have been if I made that log flume even larger. Because as much of a Magic Mountain inspiration that this mountain is with its suspended coaster and the log flume, it's certainly not as large as Magic Mountain, and certainly not as much space to play around with, which made it quite hard to actually fit this suspended coaster in. Which is why it actually takes a couple of tries to get both the station and the lift hill and pretty much all of the elements of this ride in. And yeah, that was actually... You just saw that little piece of the lift hill become red, and I still have no idea what causes that, but sometimes when you just give a lift hill a certain length, it turns red and it doesn't work. But then when you slightly change the length of the pieces before that part, which it can't place, it suddenly places the exact same piece fine. I have no idea what's actually going on with that. It's a bit annoying, kind of like how this game already forms tunnels if you're just a little bit too close to the terraforming. I mean, it's not too great of a solution, I suppose, for hitting the ground with a coaster car. It's certainly not as bad as Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 was, where it would just completely demolish your entire mountain if you only touched it a little bit with your coaster. but it's a bit hard to get this thing in, also have it sort of follow the ground a little bit, while not creating tunnels and not hitting the log flume, which is why it actually took a fair amount of time to get this inverted coaster right, which it's pretty damn painful to look at. It's pretty damn painful to look at myself just having so much trouble with trying to get this suspended coaster to actually work, but in the end I am quite happy about it. But you'll have to see that in the next episode, because this is where I'm gonna cut this episode pretty soon, because I'm evil like that, haha. So it just kind of dips over the water over there. Actually, I think it does a different dip, doesn't it? Yeah, eventually it does a different dip. But you'll have to see that in the next episode, because it's ending right here. So see you then. And thanks for watching, of course. I mean, and as always, thanks for watching.